Daf Yomi, Tractate, Chullin, page? What page are we on? 46b. And we left off, we went into the Daf a few lines, the Amud a few lines. We're up to the part where it says the Siman, the mnemonic. Okay? The Siman is Ahine Sumaka Divish Gelide Siman. The Gemara provides a mnemonic to remember the following statements of Rava with regard to the long, which are dates, red, that dried, and scabbed. Gufa Amar Rava Rea de ig lid Keahina Sumaka Keshera Yamarava Rea Shehedima Miksata Keshera Kulatrepa. The Gemara turns to the matter itself mentioned above. Rava says, this animal with a lung whose outer membrane was removed, so that it looks like a red date, is kosher. And Rava says, with regard to a lung whose outer membrane reddened due to bleeding of the lung, if only part of it turned red, then the animal is kosher. But if all of it turned red, the animal is a treifa. Amarle, Ravina le'Rabbe, miktsasa mai taime. Di hadra baria, kula nami hadra baria, mi la tanya. Ushar shikotsim uremosim, ad shiyetze mehem dam. Ravina said to Rava, what is the reason that the animal is kosher if only part of the outer membrane reddened? Presumably, it is because the animal eventually recovers from the wound. But even if all of it turned red as well, the animal recovers. Isn't it taught in a Braita? If one injures one of the 8 impure creeping creatures mentioned in the Torah, one is liable for desecrating Shabbat. But if one injures other repugnant creatures and creeping animals, one is not liable until blood leaves their body as a result of the injury, even if their skin reddens as a result of internal bleeding. And if you would say, we compare the lung to one of the 8 creeping creatures, as it is taught in Braita, if the blood collected under the skin of one of the 8 creeping creatures, even if it did not leave the body, one is liable for desecrating Shabbat, because the blood will not be reabsorbed into the body, and the wound is permanent. That is difficult. If so, then there is still no reason to distinguish between part of the lung and all of it. And even if only part of the lung turned red, the animal should be rendered a treifa as well, because the blood will not be reabsorbed into the body. Rather, there is no difference between the reddening of part or all of the lung. And Rava says, if part of the lung was dried, the animal is a treifa. And how much must the lung be dried so as to render the animal a treifa? Rav Papi says in the Rava, it must be so dry that it can be crumbled with a fingernail. Kiman, Karabi Yossi ben Mishulam, Titania, Eze Shashim Tinak Ve'ena Motziyam Tibas Dam. Rabbi Yossi ben Mishulam Omer. The Gemara asks, in accordance with whose opinion is the statement? Is it in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yossi ben Mishulam? As it is taught in Mishnah, Bechorot 37. If a kosher firstborn animal has a blemish, such as a dried ear, it may be slaughtered outside the temple. What is a dried ear? It is any ear that is perforated, that if perforated does not bleed a drop. Rabbi Yossi ben Mishulam says it must be so dry that it can be crumbled with a fingernail. Afilu tema rabanan gabi oizen bechol dekasher beziko lo hadra ve'reo aval reo de lo kosher litbaviro hadra ve'reo rover hai reo tikam gilde ukame chezvasa keshera. The Gemara responds, you may even say that the statement is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis with regard to the ear of the firstborn, which is exposed to the wind. The rabbis hold that the animal would not recover if it is so dry that it does not bleed. But with regard to the lung, which is not exposed to the wind, the animal would recover unless it is so dry that it can be crumbled with a fingernail. And Rava says, this lung that stands before us, covered in scabs, or covered in black marks, or covered in sores with different appearances, is nevertheless kosher. A member says in the name of Rava, one may not compare cysts of the lungs. If one finds a perforated cyst on the lung, but does not know whether it was perforated before or after the slaughter, he may not perform a test by perforating another cyst in order to compare their appearances. Rava says, these two lobes of the lung that adhere to one another by thin strands have no need for inspection, since it is certain that these adhesions arose due to a perforation of the lung, rendering the animal treifa. The Gemara adds, and we said this halacha only with regard to adhesions that are out of order, where a lobe adhered to a non-adjacent lobe, but with regard to adhesions that are in order, that is, their normal manner of growth, and the animal is kosher.